cloud-based services. Also you.
Okay. So James had asked for this originally, and what I got from his email was just he wanted a discussion. So I told Ann, well, you know me, I can talk about this forever if you really want me to. So I will just do that, and then we can certainly have a conversation. James had asked what we saw the future of cloud-based services in the region, because we've certainly talked about it a lot in a lot of different venues. So what I'd like to say first of all is cloud means a lot of different things to different people. So I want to clarify right up front. When I use the term cloud-based computing, what I usually mean is having some vendor hosting your servers or services rather than having them here in the building. So instead of having the server here, it is someplace else, and then we are paying for that. Now that vendor might be the solution provider. So for example, it's SELCO, who is hosting our enterprise server. We purchased enterprise from them. We are also purchasing hosting services from them. That's great. It could be from a vendor that is not providing the solution, but is merely giving you the storage capacity, the high-speed data lines, the high-priced power protection and electricity, and the security and everything else that you get with a large data center. Redundancy, yeah. Rackspace, Amazon.com are two very well-known providers in that space. They don't really provide any particular services themselves. They just give you lots of infrastructure to set your servers up, and then they promise to keep them running at some certain level. So that's generally what I mean when I talk about cloud. We have moved some of our services to those kinds of vendors already. The first one being our email and calendars and contacts and other productivity stuff, which we moved over to Google last fall. Enterprise is going to be hosted by SELCO. Like I said, they don't even sell it as a host your own option, because clearly they are trying to get into the hosted environment, and that was fine with me. I am more than happy to let SELCO host that for us. Those are the two that we have moved so far. Now, if you look at the rest of our solutions, some lend themselves to the cloud very well, some not quite as well, and some not at all. So I can't really sit here and say we are going to have everything we do in the cloud in such and such a year of our technology plan, because that's just not really feasible. We have to be a little more flexible than that. So some examples, web hosting, the SELCO website, as well as the websites for libraries that we are hosting here. Those are a pretty good candidate for hosting. And in fact, web hosting services were around for a long time before a lot of these other providers. Now, we do have a little interesting wrinkle in our case that makes it a little more of a challenge, which is why we have not done this yet. We are using Horizon on a Microsoft SQL server. That's the database. Our choices were Microsoft SQL and Oracle. We had a lot more staff skills in the Microsoft area than we did Oracle, so that's what we went with. We have created a lot of plugins for WordPress that tap directly into that Horizon database to pull out interesting data, new items, for example, lists of DVDs, things like that. Unfortunately, most companies providing WordPress hosting, and a lot of our libraries are using WordPress because we've pushed it very hard because it's a good platform, are set up with Linux because it's cheaper, and there's a lot of Linux people out there. We were a little surprised to find out that there are not that many providers, hosting providers out there that actually run Microsoft products, and there is no connector in the Linux world that will allow a WordPress site to talk to a Microsoft SQL database. Does that make sense? It's kind of obtuse a little bit, but it's kind of a critical issue. So there are a lot of great WordPress hosts out there. I use Bluehost for my personal WordPress site. We have other staff members who use some other ones. They can't help us with this. I mean, they could host the WordPress sites, but the plugins wouldn't work. And the plugins have developed a fairly fervent following among some of our online libraries. In fact, we have libraries that have moved off of HTML static pages to WordPress sites just to get those plugins. So we can't pick a web host that doesn't support that. Now, we have identified a couple of companies that partner with Microsoft, and it looks like they could provide this service. And so we are investigating those right now. I can't say right now if it's going to pan out or not. I hope that it will, because I would love in the next fiscal year to start looking at moving that over there. If we have a problem here, that means the library websites don't go down. The SELCO website doesn't go down. That would be great for communication in times of trouble. There's a lot of other good reasons. The redundancy that you mentioned, uptime, that would be great. We've got to make sure we can find a provider, though, that's not going to kill our plugins. So that might be a good candidate. We're looking hard at that one. If we do anything, that's probably going to be the next one because we are investigating it. But I can't tell you today if it's going to pan out.
How many of the libraries are using the WordPress?
Oh, boy.
Probably 20 or more.
Yeah, I was thinking 20 to 22.
Larger libraries?
Yes. Red Wing is the last one that moved. Zumbrota is in the process of moving. From just a static HTML page that they've maintained.
One step of the cloud computing that you're describing, I may be missing something, but you're talking about virtual servers with plugins attaching to the Horizon database, that type of thing. Most of the hosting sites, there's no reason why you can't run a Microsoft box and a Linux box on the same site and talk directly there. What am I missing in this?
Well, what you're missing there, it's a perceptive question. What you're missing there is that Dynix will not support Horizon in any hosted solution other than the one they provide.
Okay. Well, but going to enterprise, that goes out the window.
Well, no, because they won't support enterprise in any host other than theirs.
Their site.
They will not support any of their solutions on any host other than either their customers
or their
sites or their own data centers.
Okay.
So yeah, that's an intriguing idea that I've been thinking about for a long time. Is let's go to Rackspace and purchase some capacity and set up our servers there. We could do that. So Dynix would not be supporting our ILS anymore, and that we can't do.
Well, go the other way. If enterprise is going to be a hosted site there, just have your server at their site. You can remotely access that Cersei's site. There's no reason why they can't run.
Well, you mean have the ILS at Dynix? Well,
and WordPress there as well.
Well, let me answer that.
Okay.
Two problems with that.
But
First of all, Dynix doesn't provide hosting for any solution besides their own. They're not going to host WordPress for us. They're an example of that first kind of provider I mentioned, where they provide hosting for the solutions that they sell.
They don't allow you to host it anywhere else.
And they do not allow you to host them anywhere else.
Because it's proprietary software that they own and develop.
Yeah. So that brings us to the next interesting thing, though. The ILS. That's the elephant in the room. Let's get the ILS out of this office so that it's not subject to all the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. There are some real challenges with that, and this one falls into the category of not so great candidate for hosting, unfortunately. They do provide hosting services for their ILS, so we could certainly do this, and we have talked to them about it.
what's the name of this place?
Dynix.
Oh.
That's the company that provides Horizon. And they would certainly host Horizon for us.
Yeah.
Here are the caveats. No access to the database.
No access.
No access at all. We use SQL extensively to expand the functionality of the system and do a lot of things that the client can't do.
The reports.
And also to create reports. Right, those are the two big things. I mean, we have, for example, the rollover of collection codes that makes local request only work. That's a manual thing we created where we run SQL scripts that change that in batch. Can't do that. They will not allow you to do that in their hosting environment. You can't use SQL to run reports directly. You're stuck with their reporting tools. And the reason they do that is they cluster their customers on servers. So when you're hosted by them, you're sharing a server with probably 4 or 5 other Horizon customers, and if they let you have access directly to the database with SQL, they can't promise that you wouldn't inadvertently be able to access the data in the other customers' databases, because it's probably one big database and they've just got you sort of segmented. So that's a no-no, and we've had many conversations about that. I know we've talked about it in this group. Would we be willing to give this up? It's kind of hard to imagine that we could give up everything that we do with SQL.
But
Not
it's
impossible.
going to get better, though, right? I mean, we're going to be constantly in this difficult position.
Well, here's what we could see happening. Cersei Dynix has told us that they are willing to talk about giving us a hosting solution that is just us, and thus would let us have access. It's incredibly expensive, first of all.
Millions?
Well, not millions, but a whole lot of money. The other thing is, I'm hoping they'll eventually liberalize a little bit and give us some more options. The other thing that Cersei Dynix has told us, the second obstacle, is they have told us that if we did want to virtualize with them, we would have to simplify our configuration. We've got too many collection codes, too many I types, too many B types, too many rules, too many parameters, because every library has a completely separate set, and they're concerned about performance. They're not saying every single library would have to have the exact same set of parameters. They're not going that far, but they are saying we would have to simplify a little bit for them to guarantee performance. And that's maybe not quite as critical in some ways as the lack of SQL, but it's pretty darn critical in its own ways.
So what's the life on enterprise? What's your thinking 3 years out on enterprise?
Well, they're developing it now. There was a period of time where they had stopped development, but then nobody moved on to their new platform that they're pushing.
3 years ago, our production libraries were open source, and they'd already dumped all this stuff with Cersei Dynix.
Yeah.
Where's that environment?
I don't see any of the open source solutions being real good for a consortium like this.
Because Seattle is not all the multiple libraries.
But Seattle is a library with a whole lot of branches that report to a central office.
Right.
And yeah, it's a different kind of consortia. I haven't seen any other solutions that work anywhere near as well as Horizon. Polaris maybe would be the first one I would look at if we absolutely had to move, but I even have some questions about them. So for the foreseeable future, I don't personally see Horizon being a good candidate for hosting. If I could just wave my wand and say I'm allowed to move one service to a hosted environment, that would be the one for obvious reasons. But everything's just not quite aligned right now.
Do they have redundancy?
Yes.
Are there other things that happened the other day? I was thinking about that. I mean, what does that, let's say we're able to do it. Does that affect staffing at SELCO? But it
Possibly. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
real people are real people who we know and love.
Still need people to administer
We would not,
the software.
he's being careful. I'm telling you that I do not believe that we would need the same level of staffing that we have now. It would be, we would still need some staff, we would need, and we may need staff that have different skills. So we have a policy that talks about how we change staffing needs, and if the policy says that I can terminate based on changes in skill sets.
The biggest thing is the server room. Right. You don't have many boxes in the server room.
Exactly.
So you drop back the page back.
I do think that there would be a very different configuration on staffing, but I also think in a respectful manner to the people we know and love that, you know, when we make this decision, it isn't going to be like Ann signs the contract on Friday and oh, by the way, it happens on Monday.
No.
We're going to have weeks and weeks and months of knowing that this is happening.
Right. Well, the nice thing about VMware is you can, you've got the virtual servers, you're already down the road where they can change.
Yeah, there are
exactly what you're doing today, going from one SAN to another. Only thing is the bandwidth.
Yeah, there are hosting
bandwidth for what you need to do that if you're going to make that happen.
Yeah, there are hosting providers where you just send them your VM and off you go. And that has a lot of attraction. It's one of the many reasons we started implementing virtual servers in the first place is 5 or 6 years ago. Actually, it might have been even a little more than that now. we saw this coming and started virtualizing things. There were a lot of reasons. That was not the only one, but it was one of them. But we've still got a lot of other solutions that we're hosting here. Pharos, for example, there's a Pharos server here. That one might be a pretty decent candidate for virtualization.
SQL database.
Well, but it just authenticates against it. So that's handled at more of a machine level.
Okay.
So that's feasible. But on the other hand, the Pharos server, frankly, doesn't have a lot of overhead. We don't spend a lot of time maintaining it. It doesn't take a lot of system resources. So you have to look at that as well. What is the breakdown between what we're spending now and the cost of moving it? We have other servers. We have several different servers related to e-commerce. One that works through the current catalog and Horizon. We have others that work through the various self-checks out there. Those might not be bad candidates, except that I would say my experience with the e-commerce software so far has been that it's fragile and tricky, and now that it's working, I hate to even look at it for fear of what it might do. So there's that. There's lots of internal network stuff. Of course, we've got our own domain controllers and things like that, Active Directory servers for maintaining users and privileges and things like that, shared storage, where all staff have their home directories for Citrix. Those may not be they may or may not be. Frankly, we haven't investigated that much yet, so I don't know that I have much of an opinion on those. I'm kind of running out of servers here, but you get the idea. Citrix is probably not a good candidate to try and virtualize. Well, I mean, I take that back. It's a good candidate to virtualize because we have it virtualized now. I don't know that it's a good candidate to have someone else hosting. So it's really a mixed bag.
So if we were going to choose something brand new now, invent libraries now, we would probably want something like Horizon. We like Horizon. Mm-hmm. We would want that. And we would want the software distribution or whatever.
That's right? One of the many terms for it, software as a service, yes.
We would want that. And so then we would have to design our things that can go with that, right? I mean, that we would start with those two things.
I think so. And if we moved ILSs, we would most likely end up with a hosted solution because all the ILS vendors are jumping on this bandwagon. They don't like having the libraries hosting their own servers. They would much rather have that in an environment they control. So it's getting harder and harder to host your own solution.
So what I keep kind of hearing is that that's what we would do if we could invent it for ourselves today. And increasingly, we're being pushed in that direction. Then it's maybe time to start thinking about how to eliminate our hurdles. And when we talk about not as customizable, we've customized a lot of Horizon because we can. Yeah, so you give me the paint pot and we can mix up a lot of different variations.
Right.
So, I mean, if there are, could we think of developing 5 abstract profiles of ideal sorts of profiles for something like if we were going to go there and then see just how many people could fit into those little slots or something, or how agonizing would this really have to be? I don't know.
Well, no, it's an interesting question, and this is where my longevity with the organization, I've been here 13 years, probably actually starts to become just a slight impediment because I've been through enough bashing and arguments and tough meetings to be just a little bit skeptical that we would ever get everybody on board. But maybe I need to think out of the box a little more and have a little more faith in everybody.
Well, and sometimes 80% is what you get as happy people. That'd be good, 80%.
But you also have to think of everyone's values too. What you value, well, local control really, and that comes up to a system level too.
Well, but I guess what I'm thinking is that if it's just a question of time, if it's inevitable, and if the payoff is great enough, it's kind of like gun control, right? Not go there, right? So if the payoff is great enough, if what you get in return is more stability, run better, cheaper, freeing up your staff time to do the other stuff you
think that's a very, very valid point. And that's exactly the heart of the matter is figuring out what that trade-off is. And is that increased stability and uptime and everything else, plus the possible changes to staff. Maybe you're spending less time running servers and you're spending more time on training and creating rooms and stuff like that, becomes worth what you give up.
Well, and if I have to give up something like, well, we go to 2-week checkout instead of 3-week checkout, you know, I can do that. If I go to, okay, I can still choose, but instead of being able to design my own choice of how I want things to run with complete independence, I have a choice of 10 options.
Yep.
Maybe I'm willing, maybe I'm not. Depends what the 10 options are. But I guess I think I don't see how we can't start pretending that you can't decide until you know what your choices are. So I guess I think we have to almost design it to see if we would want it.
And I think that's where going to enterprise is going to be the first step. We're going to move this catalog, which is your public face, your public service component, person other than your staff, but you know the person who is going online at 2 in the morning is interacting with the catalog. Let's move that into a cloud-based environment, see what enhancements and how that works, and then look at incrementally, okay, what other things can we begin to work on? So, but I want to sort of try this very integral public service aspect in this new world environment. And it sounds great. Put it in the cloud. There's redundancy. There's power. There's security. There's everything. Until somebody cuts the fiber line in Atlanta, and now we're dead.
Well, that's where the redundancy comes in. That's where the redundancy comes into the site. Atlanta goes down, Texas comes back online.
What to go for? But that's all part of the contract
That's
too.
old.
There's the
Telephone
uptime.
company's been doing it for decades now. That's old hat.
True. But in the contract, you get a certain level of guaranteed uptime that's directly related to what you can pay.
And right here, SELCO cannot afford the amount of bandwidth to do a redundant site to make that happen.
We can't afford the licensing to do a redundant site
So
because
you can't. SELCO can't go out there and build a redundant site. It's not cost effective by any means. I'm assuming. You got. I think I saw a figure of 90,000. You just stuck in the sand. Okay. You got 90,000. 3 more years, you're going to stick another 90 to 120,000 in another new one. Just the nature of hardware. Okay. So you got that ongoing cost. You can roll that into a cloud situation. What you just mentioned with Enterprise and WordPress, if Enterprise works the way I think is, those 20-some sites can take advantage of those rooms, and you get rid of WordPress. That takes care of you've already got it at the site. Boom.
So that's why I say we need to get to enterprise first to see what that environment
The room sounds like it can do everything.
It's certainly a potential.
That's just an idea. You know.
But no, I mean, you're exactly right. It's just we've got independent libraries, and we can't assume that they're all going to be willing to go on board. But I agree, there's a lot of potential there, and I think you're right.
Yeah. What's your uptime word?
Resistance to change.
Oh yeah, always.
Yeah.
But I think that the key is it's the uptime. It's the
What's the value to that?
and there's a huge value. So is it we can give you better uptime, but you have to give up 3-week checkout. Then those are the decisions you have to make at the local level. And I'm not saying that you have to give up 3-week checkout.
Or can you give up the local request only rollover? Because I see that as probably a bigger, more painful thing.
But maybe there's some other solution to the problem that we don't even know about. I mean, all of those things are solutions to problems. So if maybe there's another way to solve what they were trying to solve, which was having things on the shelf ready, available more quickly for their people. So it doesn't have to, that doesn't have to be the solution for that problem.
So we've had an absolutely great discussion. I know we will have it again because, in about 6 months we will have another cloud discussion because we'll be up on Enterprise and we'll then be ready to start thinking
Enterprise
about
is cloud-based.
It is.
Yes.
So what are you doing with WordPress?
Well, WordPress doesn't really talk to Enterprise. Enterprise and WordPress both talk to the Horizon database server.
That's still here.
And that's still here. And that's the thing. That's the one. That's the SQL database that's that we can't easily host.
So we're moving to the cloud.
We're trying. We're moving what we can, and basically I'm being very opportunistic about this.
And the weakest part is your database.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is also the biggest, most mission critical part of it.
800-pound gorilla.
Right.
Yes.
So why can't you do that? What am I missing on independently doing the database? Just
Sourcing Dynamics won't support it.
Oh, it has to be either on-site or...
It's got to be on either our site or Sourcing Dynamics' data center,
Boy, these guys...
or they don't support it. They're not ready or willing to deal with 24 data center providers, and I can sort of see where they're coming from. I think they need to make that hurdle. They won't do it until they're pushed into it. And right now, their customer base isn't pushing. There's a few lonely voices yelling about this, but
there's really no reason why in their data centers why they can't have a rack there for SELCO that talks right there to their site.
It's all about
You're doing the same thing. There's no reason why that can't be done.
We know that. We've
All they have to say,
all of these questions ultimately boil down to money.
no.
All this stuff boils down to the money.
When Ivy she wasn't writing, she's providing information, I was green with jealousy over her uptime compared to ours, Rochester's uptime compared to ours. First, I know she's a single site, but is her thing also hosted somewhere else? No, they just do it all. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it.
Do we never internet redundancy? Are you still one provider here?
We're still on the right. Okay. So that's cloud as it stands right now. Bottom line is we are moving things that we can when we can.
Any more on that?
Nope.
Announcements. The agenda being completed, but do we want to talk about these future meeting dates? Is that important?
We have been doing every other month, so I thought we would keep the June date on our calendar, and then when Tyler sends out a call for agenda items, if we are shy on content or shy on need, we'll just cancel the meeting.
Or you could just add the cloud to it.
Yeah, we could do that again.
I'm hoping to get,
You think you're going to get away from the cloud. Good luck.
Oh, just for a couple months.
Okay, agenda completed. We're done.
All right. Thank you all.
When are you retiring? You must be getting old.
We're going to sign off, Michelle. See you later.
4 years from May.
Well, I'm still logged on.
May 1st.
The computer's still logged on.
I'll be 65. So